thank you so much to Ben. I mean, it's crazy to see just how many people are involved in Ruva. So I hope that we have a really big launch and landing party when that baby's eventually on the moon. Enrico, I'm looking at you. Chuck it in the budget now. We want to get planned and ready because this is something that is very much worth celebrating. So thank you so much, Ben, for sharing those updates. Okay, last but not least, my friends, we've come to the very final panel of the day. I want you to get energized. So I'm going to make you all do another 1 minute chat to each other. So please turn to the person on your left or your right. If you're by yourself, go to the table behind you, next to you, and just quickly, 60 seconds, I don't know, share something unexpected that you've come across today. Anything at all, just get talking for 60 seconds and wake up. Thank you. Okay, we'll settle that down now. I'll give you a couple of seconds. Okay, thank you, everyone. So look, I know that you've all been listening to me yap on all day, so I'm very sorry to deliver the news that I'm also moderating this next panel. But it's very much about showcasing the wonderful work that our universities are doing all across Australia. And again, I think it was just so very well exemplified through Ben's update on the Ruva mission. The fact that there's 10 Australian universities all contributing that expertise and the best in practice in R&D to such a tangible generational mission is just very cool. And I think that really speaks to the fact that our universities are not just training the next generation of contributors to our space community here in Australia, but indeed that they're really leading all of the cutting edge technology, and they're ensuring that when we talk about the training and the priorities within our universities, that those are directly speaking to the needs of industry, the needs of government, the needs of defence, and all of the different partners who sort of fall into those broad ecosystems. One thing as well that we heard earlier is that when you look at IP in Australia, we are developing so much brilliant work here, brilliant expertise, but indeed that uptake from sort of IP to commercialization, probably not where it should be. So part of what we want to have a chat to you about today with our experts is understanding how the universities are tackling that, how they're meeting that challenge, and how they're ensuring that the research that they're leading within the labs get outside and they get into the hands of people who can really use that and ensure that we're sort of using it to increase again our national strengths and sovereignty and all of the different priorities that we're converging around. So without any further ado, I would like to welcome the panelists up to stage. If you can perhaps start walking up while I introduce you all. So first up, we have Ryan McClenaghan. Sorry, I have so many papers here. One moment. So we have Ryan McClenaghan, who is the Director of Defence and Space Enterprise Partnerships Unit at the University of South Australia, also coming from an industry background, so going to give us a very nice sort of interesting perspective there, straddling both academia and industry. Then we have Gary Hale, who is the Director of NRAS at Curtin University, so coming over here from the other side of Australia. Thank you, Gary. Then we have Dr. Kate Ferguson, who's the Associate Director of Strategic Projects at the Australian National University. And last but not least, Dr. Milica Symul, who's the Chief Operating Officer of iLAuNCH Trailblazer, which, again, you've heard a bit about today. So please, while we all get settled, join me in welcoming them. Yeah. So as has been said today, the panelists will be much better at telling their stories and introducing themselves than I can do. So I would like to hand to each of you just to give up to 5 minutes opening about who you are, why you're in the position that you're in, and what priorities you're really navigating within your roles. So perhaps Milica, you're right next to me. Let's start with you.
Yes, thanks, Hannah. And I'm Milica Symul, so as Hannah said, I'm Chief Operating Officer at iLAuNCH Trailblazer program. So my role is basically juggling many balls in the air. I'm responsible for the full program delivery together with the Executive Director, Darren Lovett, that you heard in a previous panel. So iLAuNCH Trailblazer program, as Darren alluded, was established under previous governments, so under the commercialization action plan, and it was created basically to close the gap, that commercialization gap that currently exists. And as Hannah said, and many other panelists before, we are really good at universities in producing IP, in pushing the boundaries of knowledge, but we are not as great as in commercializing and translating that IP into kind of industry products and services. And Trailblazer universities the program was created to close that gap and to bring industry on the journey, to develop IP, to push the technology readiness level, and to bring IP into the industry. iLAuNCH is actually Space Trailblazer, so that's why we are here today. We are also a regional trailblazer, so government awarded funding for 6 Trailblazer universities, and only one regional university, University of Southern Queensland, got an opportunity to lead the Trailblazer. We have ANU as our partner, and University of South Australia as well. So 3 universities in the consortia, over 30 industry partners. And of course, program spans from core commercialization projects, where we invest heavily into projects at the TRL level 4-5, and then within the envelope of funding, we are hoping that these projects and technologies will come to TRL 7 or 8 and have missions, space qualified missions as well. We are also having a mandate to reform universities, so big part of our job is actually to work within each university to progress those reforms, to train researchers as well, how to work with industry, how to identify industry problems, and how to deliver industry projects on time and on budgets as well. We have programs for acceleration of technologies. So as I said, our core projects are at that more mature TRL stage, but our accelerator is at the early stage of technology readiness. And educational side, of course, we are training students. We are just about to launch Bachelor of Space Technologies as well as an independent degree at University of Southern Queensland. So our program is to mobilize the IP and to actually assist industry in that translational piece as well. So I'll stop there and maybe pass it on.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. Kate.
Hi, so yes, I'm Kate Ferguson. I'm from the Australian National University Institute for Space, or InSpace, and we're really the front door for all space capability across the ANU. So my role as Associate Director Strategic Projects is really managing all of our large initiatives, our strategic projects, leading all of our industry engagement, and really connecting that research within the university with external stakeholders across industry, government, and international. So there's a very broad range of space capability across the ANU that we're supporting and growing. There's also over 200 million worth of space infrastructure across the university as well. So this is a number of different facilities that we work with, spanning a lot of different capability areas. So across our main ANU campus in Canberra, at Mount Stromlo, and out into New South Wales as well. So there's a lot of facilities across areas like the space testing and qualification, including radiation testing at the Heavy Ion Accelerator facility, things like our Quantum Optical Ground Station, and a number of other optical telescopes out at the Siding Spring Observatory in Coonabarabran. And these are being used for things like optical communications and space domain awareness, as well as astronomy. We have our remote sensing labs, our Advanced Instrumentation and Technology Centre, and optical fabrication facilities through the ANFF node in Canberra as well. So I wanted to quickly highlight 3 of our big program areas, as well as a couple of our current priorities that we're really starting to focus on. So our big programs to date have been things like the National Space Qualification Network. So this was funded by the Australian Space Agency Space Infrastructure Fund, where ANU, together with our partners at the University of Wollongong, ANSTO, Nova Systems, Sabre Astronautics and Stereotech, is really bringing together the space testing capability across the country to provide that front door to help industry, to help users have that ease of access for space qualification, testing and services, and really increase the level of mission assurance. We have our optical communications program, where we're working with partners across industry, across academia, around Australia and New Zealand, and how we can bring this capability together to do an integrated ground infrastructure that can enable future next generation optical communications, so higher data rates, higher security, and then integrating quantum technology in the future. And one of our big focus areas under that program is working with NASA, again with funding from the Space Agency's Moon to Mars program, and how we can upgrade our ground station in Canberra to be able to support NASA's upcoming Artemis 2 mission. And then a third big focus area for us has been our bushfire mission, OzFuel. So this is being able to deliver landscape flammability risk data on a continental scale before the bushfire season happens. So being able to understand where the fuel is, how much there is, how dry it is, what the risk is to communities, to be able to provide actionable intelligence and mitigate that bushfire risk. As Milica said, we're also a very proud member of the iLAuNCH consortium, and this has been an amazing mechanism for helping us accelerate our capability in these areas, as well as a number of other capability areas. I'll just finish with our two big priorities at the moment. So our big focus at the moment is a cooperative research centre bid that we're putting together. So we started engaging with the ecosystem almost 12 months ago now on the Future of Space CRC, and this has been a big journey for us so far. So we're targeting round 27, which will be submission early next year, probably March. And the big focus for Future of Space CRC is how we can capitalise on the commercial opportunities from that reduced access to space and microgravity. So what we were hearing about from Catherine earlier today is some of those opportunities, particularly in adjacent sectors like pharmaceuticals and semiconductors, where there are those opportunities that access to microgravity and being able to do development and research in microgravity can really provide. And then finally, a focus for us at ANU is how we can look at the human impact case studies from space technology, and then how that can help us really build that social license to do space in Australia. So we're working very closely with our College of Asia and the Pacific. There's a very strong capability, particularly with engagement with the Pacific, and how we can start to engage directly with those communities to understand their challenges, to understand how space can be part of the solution to those challenges, and how we can make space technology and data more accessible in those communities. So yeah, I'll finish there, and I look forward to the panel.
It's a fair portfolio of work that you're leading there, so thank you so much, Kate. Gary, what's going on at Curtin?
Yeah, hi, Gary Hale, Curtin University. I'm the Director of the National Resilience and Security Program Office, so a bit similar in role from a one-stop shop for the university for access on space initiatives, including defence and resilience. My background, set myself old when I started in space, when GPS sets were about the size of this table and told you where you were. So, and I've been working space ever since, including trained in the US, Iran-Iraq wars and a few other things during that time. So I've had a really interesting time through space, including commercialisation with Cisco and places like that. Curtin's been really interesting in developing our things. One of the things about being in Western Australia is most of the infrastructure and capability gets built without federal funding. So, and that's because of large investments with industry. And if you look at what's happened in the Northwest Shelf over the last period, that generates some 47% of Australia's exports now, and about 20% of our GDP. There's about $200 billion now to be spent, what I'm calling the Southwest Shelf Project between Fremantle and Bunbury, covering everything from maritime autonomy right through to space-based surveillance and capabilities, hydrogen, critical minerals, offshore energy, and a whole heap of other areas. So the next 20 years, we're looking at massive expenditure into the state from industry both overseas and governments overseas. From a space perspective, and where we get the opportunity is the application of space to these markets. We're lucky enough to have access to players such as BHP, Rio and others, and what they're trying to do, right through to the subsea engineering, your Woodsides, your Chevrons and capabilities like that. Where we've really developed, funnily enough, and strength in Western Australia is having space from a point of view of what's available on the ground. And that includes the Square Kilometre Array, so our Curtin Institute of Radio Astronomy combined with UWA's Institute into ICRA, drive this as part with CSIRO, support that program and Square Kilometre Array in radio astronomy. We run the Murchison Wide Field Array, which is also spun out into passive radar with NOVA, and space weather with DARPA. So a lot of spin-outs coming out of that technology and capability. The Global Fireball Observatory, run by our Earth and Planetary Sciences team and Kyra, which allows us to track meteorite re-entry, which funnily enough looks remarkably similar to hypersonics re-entry, and the application of that technology and capability in those areas. GPS, GNS tracking and satellites, Earth observation, and in particular ocean observation, with a lot of companies through that. Right into the Mars LifeSpring program that's run by Martin from our Earth and Planetary Sciences. We've just introduced we had a grad dip in space exploration and technology space physics. We've now put that into a full bachelor's degree around space exploration and space systems engineering, and that's supporting our teams and capabilities over there. And funnily enough, we're finding most of our investment is coming from overseas. So if we think of the pillar between Singapore, India, Dubai and the UK, and if you think somewhere like Glasgow that now is the largest manufacturer of satellites outside of California, they've grown that in about 15 years. So that's where we're looking at our investments into Western Australia and how that looks, and clearly working with some of the different universities over here on some different initiatives I'm sure we'll get to talk about over that time. Thank you.
Thanks. So Ryan McClenaghan, I'm the Director for Defence and Space at the University of South Australia. My background, mechanical engineering background and business development, and I've come from industry into the University of South Australia about nearly a year ago now, and as a lot of us know, the University of South Australia and the University of Adelaide are merging to create Adelaide University in the not too distant future, which is very exciting for the state. It's very exciting for both universities. It allows us to bring a lot of capability across once we integrate that university, which opens in January 2026. In terms of the size and the weight of this university, you know, it's going to be 70,000 plus students, you know, largest educator of domestic students and contributing an estimated 4.7 billion a year into the Australian economy. So it's a considerable venture that we've taken on, and it's going to be great for the state, and it's going to be great for our space sector. That university will sit in top 1% globally of all universities, and it's part of the group of 8 universities nationally. There's 5 main research intensive themes within the university. One of those is defence, space and national security. Also draw your attention to the Australian Defence Technologies Academy that has been awarded to Adelaide University. and that's a $68 million development at Lot 14. That's going to be housed in the new Innovation Centre. So that's going to be a world-class research, education and industry alignment centre, really driving the next decade of sovereign research, workforce uplift and development of innovative defence capabilities in the state. So some of the institutes, and there's close to 20, but I'll touch on the main ones with the space side that are coming across during this merger: the Andy Thomas Centre for Space Resources, Innovation and Collaboration Centre, Defence and Industry Securities Institute, the Australian Institute for Machine Learning, Future Industries, and there's plenty more. Some educational offerings that are space related. You know, we have our Global Executive MBA in Defence and Space, and you know, this is an 18-month program that's run between the UK, the US in a trilateral agreement. And then we also have our Southern Hemisphere Space Studies program that is in partnership with the International Space University. And that's on its 9th year this year, and long may it continue, as we've got some alumni in this room from that university. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, certainly so much happening in terms of collaboration. I mean, it's one of the themes that we're going to go a little bit more deeply into, but I mean, just even from all of your opening statements there, it's clear that that is just an absolute priority for each of your universities, and I think that that shows all programs indeed, and I think that that just shows, you know, how much this is needed for the space sector. So when we look at sort of addressing the needs of the space sector, right? I mean, I think what's one of the beauties of, you know, the research sector and academia is that you do have license to do, you know, research for research sake and science for science sake, and ensuring that we're sort of using these institutions and these minds and sort of the interfaculty conversations and collaborations that can happen to ensure that we're, you know, pushing knowledge forward. But at the same time, particularly in an emerging ecosystem like, you know, ours here in Australia, it's important to ensure that we are also serving the needs of the wider space sector, whether that be defence or government or indeed industry needs. So we'd just like to sort of hone in on that a little bit more, just to understand, you know, what it is that you're doing, how your institutions are operating to shape, you know, your research priorities to meet the ever-evolving needs. And just also, I suppose, the second part of that is the pace at which the space sector changes and the needs evolve. So how are you, shaping your research priorities, and B, how are you keeping up with just the fact that things change and move so fast? Kate, let's start with you.
Thank you. I mean, that's very much a part of why InSpace was set up in the first place. So we were established 7 years ago now, and that was because our director at the time, still director, but she was a professor at the time within the Research School of Astronomy and Astrophysics. She recognised that there was a very broad range of capability across the university, but ANU, as many universities and large institutions are, is very siloed. So you couldn't really drive a lot of this coordinated approach to a sector from within a single school, from within a single college. So InSpace was established at the central level of the university as an innovation institute to really cut those silos down across the university, really understand the capability across all the schools and colleges. It's not just science, it's not just engineering. There's a lot of capability within the humanities, and really bringing that multidisciplinary approach and bringing that capability together is what has driven a lot of our success and made a lot of our capabilities and innovations really relevant. So that's very much why we were set up. We don't do the research ourselves. We're a small team of professional staff doing business development, doing industry engagement, but we have sector-specific knowledge. So we are very much people who are embedded within the sector. We understand the space sector. We have developed over time those trusted relationships with our industry partners, with government. So we very much understand how the sector's evolving, how those priorities are changing, and we take that external lens and then we look inwards to the university to understand what that capability is, to understand where the research is going, but then how it could be tweaked slightly or how it could be used to solve those end user challenges. So that's very core of what we do, and we've seen a lot of success over the life of InSpace because we're taking that sector specific approach to how we can grow all of the capability across the university to further the goals of that single sector.
Just a quick follow-up. Was that an easy sell to ANU when you wanted to begin in space to sort of have that proactive approach?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So my boss likes to tell the story when she first was thinking about this idea. She sent an email out across the whole university saying, anyone who's interested in space, come to this workshop. And she had a couple of hundred people show up. One of the first people who responded was from the School of Music, who was like, I love this, I'm going to write the theme song for your institute, like, we're there. So there was very big buy-in from across a lot of different areas of the university that we didn't necessarily think of. Administratively and organisationally, no, it wasn't that easy. So we had a very strong business case. We had existing capability areas where there were clear directions that we wanted to build, and we knew an institute like ours would be able to build those capabilities and bring back that return on investment. But ANU was not set up administratively to house an institute like ours at the central level, sitting outside of the traditional school and college system. So that has been something that we've very much been trailblazing within the university since we started. It's resulted in a lot of cultural change across the university, and it's now a model that is being used for other sector-specific institutes that are starting to emerge as well.
I want to talk to you after this panel. I have a lot of questions to figure that out. Ryan, I'm curious to hear from your perspective because, I mean, obviously when you're going through a merger, everything's up for review, right? So how is it that you are aligning the research priorities for UniSA, the future Adelaide University? How do you do that?
Yeah, sure. So we went through a process, and part of that process was the one of the research themes was going to be defence, space, and national security. You know, we're very industry focused. Both universities are extremely industry focused, and the goal is to really work with industry and collaborate with other partners. An example of that is a program that we did called Ascend to Leo, and that was for technical voice and data beyond line of sight, and that was in collaboration with Fleet Space, University of South Australia, SmartSat, Safety from Space, a South Australian collaboration where, you know, we created a waveform, uploaded that to a satellite, changed the configuration so that it could take narrowband comms and data. So these particular research programs that they're running with defence and the defence space are incredibly important, and I think the collaboration piece moving forward into this new university, it's important that industry come with us and partners like SmartSat and other industry SMEs.
Yeah. Thank you. Let's see, I'm going to turn to you now because, I mean, iLAuNCH has been very successful in terms of raising the TRL. You have these very tangible use cases. How have you done that? And yeah, how have you essentially managed to work with particularly, you know, 3 different universities to sort of instill this culture of aligning, you know, priorities with industry needs? Tell us more.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm glad I have colleagues from both partner universities. And just to set the context, three universities are at very different stages of maturity, of development. We have a regional university that's coming up the speed with kind of research intensity. We have ANU that's well known for their blue sky research, and we have very applied university as well. So our approach has been that it's an industry-driven program. So you need to have an industry partner and an industry problem to get the funding from iLAuNCH. And all three universities have aligned to that mission outcome or mission-based research thematics. So that's one thing which we done at the program level. The other part is to raise the TRL, you need to invest significant funding and you need to see these projects at scale. So although when we see SmartSat CRC and their number of partners they have and number of projects that they have, that's quite impressive and that's quite big. iLAuNCH has much less, so we have about 30 partners and 30 plus projects, but they're funded at the multi-million-dollar levels. So as Kate alluded, we seeded a capability or pulled the capability basically from where it was TRL 4.5 to then have that financial injections to drive that development so that research groups can actually employ personnel, engineers, and put all of the efforts behind the program. So that was one thing that we did, I think, well. The other one is around IP, and Darren's touched on that we have very flexible arrangements that's all negotiated on the contract by contract, and it's very favorable to the industries, and that's a cultural change in its own right. So I think for the universities in general, really, we are seeing the shifts of that siloed research, blue sky or academic freedom in some sense of doing, you know, kind of what the researchers love to do, to really aligning where the funding is. And I just want to pick up on Kate's point, because at some point in time I was part of the same group, and it's really important to have those business development managers and program managers that are actually embedded and they know the industry, to actually assist researchers and to bring researchers along and industry along to the level of that collaboration that doesn't stay at singular contract, but actually builds the portfolio and program of works. And I think InSpace has done that very, very well. But I really want to say that it's not easy, and herding cats is not easy. And the value that these individuals that sometimes come from academic backgrounds and shifting careers bring is really, really important. You cannot just leave it to the academics and academic community for organically to develop, because it does need orchestration and planning.
A lot of communication
as
well, I guess. So Gary, going more into that collaboration sort of side of things, you mentioned before that, you know, obviously, Curtin, you're collaborating not only within the university and within Australia, but also internationally. You mentioned your partners in Singapore. So can you just share a little bit more about the role in which sort of that collaboration external to the university itself is shaping, you know, the work you do, and what's had the greatest impact?
Yeah, I just want to pick up one thing and then definitely do that. So what's really interesting, I think, is no one model fits everything. And I think that's really important in this. And if you look at it, for example, we probably have 3 or 4 different models, one of which you've just mentioned. But if I look at the first model around radio astronomy, the radio astronomers are very aligned. They know what they want to do. They've got great funding and alignment at DISA in getting that funding. But interestingly enough, there's not a lot of funding coming in to the innovations that could come out of Australia being really good at radio astronomy. So what I find interesting is we'll invest in one part of the ecosystem. So in radio astronomy, we're clearly in being good at radio astronomy, but we haven't thought about the spin-outs in innovation that come out of that to where we take it. Then you've got a different model, such as your industry-led models, or industry engagement models, where we're working closely with industry and in developing of new ideas or capabilities. And the reason I highlight these models is what I'm concerned about, it's probably a strong word, but as we're moving forward, I've seen, and if I look at where funding models are going, the ARC review, all these things, I'm worried about how good we're going to be at ideation in the future, right? Because you still need to generate new ideas to create capability. So I'm worried we're starting to devalue ideation and the value that that can bring in creating new knowledge at the end of the day. And you only have to look at space exploration to know that 3 of the planetary groups at universities have shut down. I think we're down to the last 2 now, or 3, I think ANU and ourselves. So then we move from there to this focus on industry engagement and approach. And what we see really working really well, if I use the iLAuNCH model as a great example, and the announcement today with Optus and Innovor, it's a fantastic example of what you can do when you've got longer term funding. So if I'm walking in and I've got 4 years of funding, I can actually commit to developing capability, to being engaged with industry, and knowing, and I can't talk for the iLAuNCH one, but we run the Critical Minerals and Resource Technologies, Trailblazer. It's taken 2 years to stand it up and get it all running, and we're just starting to hit goals and we're going to run out of funding. And if you go offshore, all the funding models that you look at, particularly in defence, you know, if you look at an MIT Lincoln Labs or a University of Strathclyde up in Glasgow, they're 10-year models. They're strategic investments, multi-year approach to how you build capability over time. And so we've started to do that with Trailblazer. Trailblazer should be that taster that sort of gets us started, but now how do we build that? And within that, define what Australia's going to be good at. Because I think we're bad at that. Like, we sort of throw everything out and decide what we're going to do. So I think it's a great opportunity to do that. And if you look at everything, you know, our strengths, we're really good at looking from the ground at space. We're really good at building small spacecraft. We're really good at sensors and capabilities, and we're really good at data, you know, bringing data together at scale and processing and creating intelligence out of that. So there's a whole heap of things that we're good at that we have to look at that investment. So coming to your actual question, when we go offshore, we're looking at those different models and then saying, where would investment from Singapore or Dubai, you look at the $3 billion Dubai Space Research Fund, or India or the UK and the US through some of its defence programs, where do they fit into what model we're trying to produce out of that? And the intent or the outcomes we're trying to produce. So that's how we look through all that as a set of lenses to try and figure out whether. And the international investment, again, is really interesting for different purposes. Singapore is very technology focused. If you think about the Singapore government, very invested in buying technology companies and capability as a national sovereign fund. India clearly trying to expand its wings into areas and where it can spend all its development capability and co-develop with countries. UAE is trying to build its people and its knowledge and its capability and what it's doing and putting big sovereign funds in place. And clearly the UK, you know, based on some of the things that are happening in the world, are trying to become more independent in what they're doing in space and capability. So I think, you know, when I look at it, they're the sort of pieces I look at in defining the models and understanding them. And I think as a university, you've got to be aware of all of those across there. But yeah, the biggest piece is how do we get to longer term funding across the ecosystem so we don't lose the capability to ideate, to partner, to develop capability, and I guess and work with industry and offshore and building country capability. But the underpinning piece we forget about this, and we see it in West Australia a lot, because we only got 2% employment, is building workforce. Because fundamentally that whole spectrum allows you to build people with different skills of capability as you do that. So that's how we sort of look at it. How do we do that? How do we build a research-led, teached workforce? How do we integrate that workforce into those programs or the students into those programs in hybrid models, and then based on what we're trying to achieve out of that, how we invest?
Very conscious of time, but just to quickly follow up on this whole longevity of funding piece of the puzzle, you know, who do we need to be sort of lobbying in Australia to get that set up? Do you envision this coming from a diversified portfolio of supporters and funders? Or?
Well, I think part of it is how we align as different. We have a lot of different agencies and capabilities. I think a great example is probably Southpan as a GPS enhancement program or approach where, you know, all the different agencies came together and said, you know, ultimately we need to do better, because if we get GPS positioning right, we're going to get better crop returns, we're going to get, you know, all these different outcomes. And just for people who don't know, the difference between non-GPS and GPS is around 4% profit for a farmer at the end of the day, so it's pretty significant on the margins. And so that's an example of a nation-building program. If I look at national resilience, and we're in a higher geopolitical threat environment, how are we building observation satellites for the northern of Australia and all through the seaways there, so we can not only be better prepared to understand what's going on up there, but also how can we inform our Pacific Island partners and our regional partners on what might impact them and how we can help them in some of the thinking. So I think they're national resilience missions in my mind, generally, and how we can align that funding, but also think about the international partners that want to be part of that, and then the industry outcomes, both at a commercial, a civil, and a military level. So that's sort of how I build that out.
Yeah, makes sense. I'm conscious of time, so we want to get you out of here on time. I had intended to go to the audience for any questions, but I just ask that if you do have any questions for our panelists, and please, come and grab, I'm just speaking on all of your behalf, but I'm sure they are open to questions at the end of the day after we officially close this session. But we wanted to speak a little bit more about sort of how Australia can really position itself in this global environment, both in terms of academic excellence and, again, servicing the needs not only of, our national needs, but also our partners in the Indo-Pacific and beyond. But for the sake of time, I just would like to ask each of you just to give any sort of final words or message, because unfortunately we need to wrap it up here, but any final words of wisdom, any asks to the stakeholders or decision makers in the room, any messages that you want to get across?
I'm just going to pick up on astronomers, because both Kate and Gary work with astronomers, and they are a very organized community. They have their decadal plan, they stick to the decadal plan, and they kind of align the needs and capabilities for their disciplines quite well. So there is a lesson to be learned there on how to coordinate the efforts, and I think that's something that probably space industry should look into to better align and better sell that story of space and funding for space. So that will be my 2 cents.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd very much like to echo that point, but also Gary's point about the long-term funding, but also clarity of priorities that provides. There's a lot of programs that are coming in, things like the Trailblazer program. That's fantastic, but at the moment it seems to be a one-off. So there's no continuity, no longevity in that. Things like the industry fellowships, which came in for a couple of years, trying to drive academics at different stages of their careers and really fund them and fund those targeted collaborations with industry. They come in for a couple of years, but now they've disappeared from the ARC calendar for next year. So is this still a priority of the government? We don't know. So it's not just having 10-year programs, which is crucially important, but also just that continuity of priorities, clarity, certainty to help with everything that we're doing and building those long collaborations.
Thank you.
Yeah, look, I think the thing that we should acknowledge is we're actually pretty good at space as Australia. We're, in fact, really good at technology adoption and building systems out of that technology and creating capability. And we're not very good at telling people about it. And, the tall poppy syndrome hits pretty quickly as Australians. We can't help ourselves. But my sense is, when I look at what our universities, and sitting in Curtin, and I know, having visited soon to be Adelaide University and the iLAuNCH and ANU, the amount of capability and capacity, what I'd call almost unspent yet, like that's sitting in there, is amazing. So how do we turn that engine on? How do we create that? And we're just starting to see it. I think with the ASA and with everyone else coming in, they've started to turn that on. This is my 5th space starting point in the 40 years I've done space, and 4 of them have started and stopped, right? So this is the first one that's actually got momentum that's coming. And if people remember the 2000 crash when Microsoft were going to launch 500 satellites, and you can go through history and see all these points where space never really took off. My sense is we've got an opportunity. I think it's now, how do we take the next step which is alignment of agencies, alignment of capability, alignment of what we want to be good at, the partnering and capabilities, but also offshore. I think if we can crack that nut, I think we'll be in a pretty good place.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just to echo Gary, look, I think the future's bright for the space sector. I really do. And in closing, I'd just like to thank iLAuNCH for taking the initiative for this SWIFT program with Optus and the universities. I think that's a really good step forward. So great announcement this week.
Thank you. It's nice to end on an optimistic note. I feel like so often we're conditioned to problem solve in space, right? Because everything's complicated. And it's really nice to also stop and reflect and, you know, pause on the fact that, like you said, we have incredible capabilities here. We have a very, very strong research base. And indeed, we have an industry who want to engage. And I mean, that's the best thing. We just need a bit more money. So if anyone has that piece of the puzzle, then come and have a chat. Okay, so thank you so much again to our 4 speakers. Please feel free to grab any of us at the end of the day to ask any of those questions. And please join me in thanking them for not only their panel participation today, but what each of you are leading in your institutions. It's really needed and genuinely underpins the whole ecosystem here. So thank you. Okay, so with that, we've officially reached the end of today's program. So thank you so much for staying to the very end, and thank you all for your genuine engagement throughout the day. It's always nice when you sort of leave environments like this and go into the exhibition halls and you see that people are genuinely going deep, they're inquisitive, they're asking questions. And I hope as well that, you know, further sort of going back to the initial call of action today, I hope that you have met some new people and discovered some new perspectives, because that's really why we convene. It's important, as we've just heard here, that we can't just sort of stay within our silos. We need to be very proactive in terms of reaching out. And once you get on a stage together and once you get into a room together, you realize that everyone is really navigating the same things. So there's a lot of promise and a lot of potential and so many great things happening in the Australian space sector and with our allies and friends abroad. And today's just, yeah, it's really blown my mind. But you've listened to me talk enough, but just some very quick reminders. So obviously, day 2 tomorrow, we'll be going into 3 tracks tomorrow, which means that you can sort of pick and choose where you want to be focusing your attention. So please be sure to have a look on the program. Another reminder, it is on the back of the lanyard if you need that. We have some networking events and sort of drinks this evening. I believe there's AYAA over at Lot 14 for an event now. I think Paddy Newman has booked the pub. Locals, what's the pub called? The Strathmore. Everyone at the Strathmore. Balcony at the Strathmore, place to be. So keep the conversations going. Thank you so much for your attention and for dealing with me yap on to you all day. It's been such a pleasure to see what's happening in Australian space. I've learned a lot. I've taken so many notes throughout the day, and it's just a pleasure to connect with you all. But before we officially wrap, I would like to welcome on stage Peter Nikoloff, who of course is the CEO of the Andy Thomas Space Foundation, wearing a very festive jacket. So please give him a warm welcome and thank you again.
So the jacket is by popular demand. The jacket came out last night at dinner and I got all day working out, asking me where my jacket has gone. And I guess for those people who didn't go to the dinner, they'll get the privilege of seeing the jacket. But yeah, no. Thanks a lot for the big day, and I'd certainly like to thank Hannah. She's actually been fantastic. Her insights and her background has been really valuable for today, and so a big hand for Hannah for the amazing job she's done and kept it on time too. And I'm not sure if it's a drinker, but we have some good South Australian wine with the Andy Thomas logo on it, so you need to keep that in mind forever.
Thank you.
So thanks for that.
Thank you so much, Peter.
The speakers that we had today, covering academia, government, defence, Australian, international, space agencies, JAXA, NASA, have just been fantastic. We've got a very, very, very good insights from completely across that whole regime for our sector. So I'd like to thank all those speakers, and maybe we'll send them letters afterwards, but I think that's been really important for us. Let me get my notes because I'm hopeless at remembering. So I think most of it's been covered. We've got the Strathmore drinks, which is a big popular thing that is normally run by Paddy Newman. He'll be out there screaming or standing on things in his jacket and his 1900 speak. We'd like to thank particularly the US Space Force and DIU people that came across. And I think we really need to keep in contact with them because they do have lots of money. And I'm not sure if that message came across strongly enough, but they do want our industry to speak to them with new fantastic space initiatives solving some of the challenges we have, particularly in the defence environment. So make sure you touch base with them and see if we can get some bucks of money in Australia. For any of the moderators, if they're here for tomorrow, keeping timing is really important between the 3 tracks because people swap from track to track, so we need to keep that very, very close. And also, if some of you noticed, we had the kids come through today, visiting a number of our exhibitors, so that's thanks again for all that support and inspiring our next generation of kids. I think that's it. I don't need to say much more. Hannah, I think, a good wrap-up anyway. So thanks, everyone, and we'll see you tomorrow morning or at the Strathmore or wherever. So thanks again.